To be classified as a serial killer, a person must murder 3 or more people over more than a month. The motive of serial killers can include anger, thrill-seeking, financial gain, attention-seeking, and even revenge. Serial killers usually have a pattern of behavior that law enforcement will focus on to help them be caught, otherwise known as an MO or modus operandi. Today, I will talk about a man who is admitted to killing 71 people and is suspected of killing well over 100 more. Yet, he walked free after only serving 30 years in prison. Yes, you heard me correct. He only served 30 years in prison and then walked free. Pedro Filhno, known as the Brazilian Dexter, because similar to the popular TV show Dexter, Pedro would target people who were criminals or wrongdoers. Because of this, he was described as the perfect sociopath, although others prefer to classify him as a psychopath instead. Pedro had the cards stacked against him before he was born. When his mother was pregnant with him, his father kicked her so hard in the stomach that it permanently dented his skull. His father also repeatedly beat Pedro during his childhood, so it came as no surprise that his first murder came at a young age. Pedro killed for the first time when he was only 14 years old, shooting a deputy mayor in front of City Hall. He did this as a retaliation of his father being fired for a suspected petty theft. Pedro's MO of being a vigilante for what he deemed at justice began to emerge, as abuse was always a constant in his house. When Pedro found out that his father was in prison for murdering and dismembering his mother with a machete, Pedro visited his father in prison and killed him by stabbing him 22 times. After committing this murder, he carved his father's heart out and bit off a piece of it. But his father's murder was not his second murder. Before committing this heinous act against his father, Pedro tortured and killed many drug dealers and traffickers in Brazil, as he wanted to seek revenge and rid Brazil of its criminals. Then Pedro met a woman, Maria Olympia, who would become his fiancée. While she was pregnant with his child, she was brutally murdered by gang members. This was a pivotal moment in his criminal behavior, as Pedro needed justice for not only Maria, but also his unborn child. Pedro committed a massacre during a wedding organized by the gang's leader, where he and some friends brutally killed 7 people and injured 16 others. Months after the massacre, another murder took place. Pedro discovered that the boyfriend of his favorite cousin had impregnated her, but refused to marry her. And so Pedro fatally shot him in revenge. After all of these murders, Pedro was finally arrested and sentenced to 126 years in prison in 1973. This did not deter him from committing more murders. Pedro proceeded to murder 47 fellow inmates while he was incarcerated. These murders expanded his sentence up to 400 years. Then how was he free when he died? Well, the law in Brazil has decided that they cap prison sentences at 30 years. So no matter how many people you kill, you will not serve more than 30 years behind bars. So when Pedro started his prison sentence in 1973, and he served his initial 30 years, plus an extra 4 years for the murders committed behind bars, yes, for killing 47 inmates, he only had to serve 4 more years. Then, in 2007, Pedro was released. It should come as no surprise that Pedro could not stay out of trouble. And in 2011, he was imprisoned again for charges of inciting a riot and was sentenced to 8 years in prison. But he was re-released in 2018 after 7 years for good behavior. Since his release in 2018, Pedro announced that he is a reformed man and is committed to speaking out against crime and criminals. Pedro was considered a Brazilian celebrity and YouTuber, commenting on modern crimes while educating the public about criminal acts being not something to be proud of. Yet sadly, Pedro's story took a tragic turn on March 5th, 2023, when he was shot and killed by 2 unidentified assailants who opened fire from a car. The perpetrators fled the scene in another vehicle, leaving behind many unanswered questions. To this day, no suspects have been arrested in connection with his murder. A significant takeaway from Pedro's story is that no matter how many murders you commit in Brazil, the most you will serve is 30 years. I don't know about you, but that is terrifying to me. Thank you all for joining me on another episode of Twisted Tales of Murder. Remember to like and subscribe.